News First, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And very good morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And a lovely day out there, marvellous weather, and Sri Lanka is looking at its best, really, weather-wise anyway. And in parts of the country, the tourists are enjoying what the country has to offer them, and the people are going about their business. So we are indeed happy, or are we? But there are various things that need to be tweaked here, there, and everywhere. And one of those things is the state of one of our national assets, if you like, and that is the state of the state banks, often the target of a variety of raids by design and or otherwise. And to discuss a little bit more about that is a former senior banker in the form of Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon. Very good morning to you, Mr. Rusiripala.
Good morning, Faraz.
Enjoying your business at the CMC and all that?
Oh, well, yes, it's going on.
Good.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the focus these days seems to be on the state of the state banks, and in particular the People's Bank. Why is there so much of concern? Is it just politics, or what is it?
No, I think it goes beyond politics, and it's a serious matter on which the public is focusing and the financial sector is focusing, which deserves to be focused in that form because of the importance of the banks to the economy and because of the importance of the issues that they are taking up. The media, the critics and everybody. So it has become a bit of a it has come to a state where all will have to seriously look at things that are happening. That is the state of affairs in the state-owned banks.
Now then, often you hear about these things and then one is left wondering. For example, Sri Lankan Airlines, I think everybody plus one knows that Sri Lankan Airlines is a loss-making enterprise, and it's, in a truest sense of the word, it is not bankable. So how come every time we are treated to all sorts of information, and it's very stark, the Prime Minister himself said that Sri Lankan Airlines has made so much of losses, and yet then on the other side we find the state banks lending them money.
Yes.
What's the rationale behind that?
I think this is one of the most important things that you touched on. That is, there is this norm where the politicians claim when something goes wrong in the state banks, they say, well, they have the autonomy to function on their own.
Yeah.
And here is the other contra situation, where they give directives to the banks to support the falling down or crashing public institutions. And in such instances, the banks do not have the right or do not get the privilege of applying their norms in the normal way to assess the creditworthiness or assess the lending principles on that basis. They are directed to lend. So the politicians come and say when the things go bad, well, that is a business of the bank. They have gone and lent. But what really has happened is the banks, state banks, are under some kind of compulsion, a pressure from the politicians to keep on lending to the state-owned banks, the state-owned enterprises. Your example is the best, the Sri Lankan Airlines. Now, if you ask the Sri Lankan Airlines, go to any bank in Sri Lanka and make an application for borrowing, I'm certain, almost certain, that no bank will consider granting them any facility because of the net worth, the creditworthiness and their liabilities, accumulated liabilities and their future, the unstable position. All these will be taken into account by any bank which makes a right assessment, a credit assessment at the time of granting a loan. But these are instances where the banks are not in a position to do so.
What sort of losses Sri Lankan Airlines are we talking about? How many
I think it's
billions?
it's a negative value of about 70 billion.
70 billion.
Yes, it's a negative value, you know. So this is a very serious situation. Which is the bank in the world who will go and lend monies to such a thing without a proper restructuring plan or without a proper support? You know, for the finances that they are losing or giving, nobody will give. Now, the worst thing is not only the lending. You take the bond commission issue. I'm sorry, we have to keep on referring to this, unfortunately, to this bond commission because that reflects everywhere. Whatever you touch on, either you spread your tentacles to either the state-owned banks or to the bond commission. You know, it's a state of affairs in the country. Now, the Minister of Finance summoning the 3 chairmen and the chief executives of the bank to his office and asking them not to bid beyond a certain limit. In other words, he was dictating the limit under which the bank should bid in the bond auctions of the central bank. Now, where in the world is this happening for us? Is this the autonomy? This is where they are themselves flouting the autonomy, and they say they allow the bank to do these things or they want the bank to do these things. Banks, on the other hand, they use the autonomy in this same climate to do whatever they want. This is what has gone wrong. This is what has gone wrong. When the master, there is a saying in Sinhala, when the master does one thing standing, the disciples do it running kill. That is there's a singular saying, you know, I don't want to repeat it.
That's what it is.
So these people, the bankers who say that they have this the autonomy or the right or whatever, the privilege, they are using it in their own way to, unmonitored, uncovered, you know, unobserved. On their own, they are doing things which have become very disastrous to the banks again. This is the critical situation the banks have fallen to today is a result of this, direct result of this.
One of our viewers is asking you, what happens if the bank refuses to lend to these institutions? Let's say there's a chairman and his board who listen to the bankers in the bank and say, no, we're not lending. That's it.
No, the answer is very simple. You know, it's not a question of the bank refusing or somebody asking to give. There must be a policy directive and a policy line and a clear principle that they should adopt. Now, this is nothing new that listeners should know. This has cropped up several decades ago in 1992 when the People's Bank and the Bank of Ceylon was publicly declared bankrupt. By whom? By the then Minister of Finance of the country. What was the reason behind? The main reason adduced behind was, of course, it was the capital inadequacy that brought it to the surface. But then, going beyond the capital inadequacy, there were reasons identified by international audit firms which conducted audits under the auspices of the government itself, international audit firms, and which declared that there are certain wrong practices followed by the banks. For example, insufficient loan loss provisions, unrecoverable loans, then inadequacies in their provisions to their pension funds and employees' funds. And also, when the capital adequacies were taken, they were far short below the standards that should have been maintained. So these were identified reasons, and in the debate that ensued, it was very clearly pointed out that the banks, most of the loans that have gone into unrecoverable situation at that time were due to the directives by the bank, by the government. And you know, the solution offered was, I was a part of that discussion. Pascal Ingham's, lots of other people, you know, economists in this country, with the World Bank represented. As trade unionists, we took part in that thing. And I know what they discussed. And finally, the outcome was in the agreement that reached between the banks and the government, the treasury, in the recapitalization exercise, one of the cardinal principles that they enunciated at that time was that there should not be government directive lending.
I see.
It is there in black and white. I mean, most of the people are not aware. This is there. You know, so the banks, what has happened is, you can have something on paper, you can have something, you know, between as an understanding. If you don't implement it.
Now, Mr. Rusiripala, you bring up an interesting point here. Usually, usually when we ask the central bank about various financial institutions and like this loan, paycheck, salary day loans and so on, short loans at huge interest rates. One company doing its rounds now is, if you look at its APR, it would be around the 365% mark, very expensive. So when we asked the central bank, they said, well, we don't regulate them. Therefore, what's the stance of the central bank and its very active, or supposedly active, monitoring unit, monitoring the licensed commercial banks? What happens to them? What's the CBSL stance on that then?
This is a glaring instance where the central bank has defaulted heavily, seriously, critically. Why? They should be aware of the agreement that the government of Sri Lanka entered into with the state banks. And if they meant it is as something that should have been followed, it was their duty to supervise and implement schemes and measures where what were the conditionalities that was given in that agreement were observed to the letter. If they were just meant to be there for some reason or the other, or to deceive somebody, or to get over a situation, I mean, that is what it appears to be. The government entered into that agreement and then finished it off and forgot about the conditionalities because that served the purpose at the time. And thereafter they went back again. And you know, during Chandrika Kumaratunga's time, when she was the president and she was the Minister of Finance also, again there was government-oriented lending that started. And that again, of course, there was a difference. She gave government bonds to support the lending. And following that era, that continued to a phase where the government directed the banks to lend without any such bonding or any such security.
Now, we also have a situation where another one, the Bank of Ceylon, has released an overdraft, a temporary overdraft of I think the amount was 300 million. 300 million. On the strength of a letter, or purported letter, from the Treasury to say, well, you know, if you want to lend, you can lend. Yes, we are discussing the settlement of some amount of money. But on that flimsy kind of excuse, the Bank of Ceylon advances 300 million. There's no visible security. Now, this is yet another one. This is just chicken feed compared to what they've given Sri Lankan Airlines.
Now, in the commission that is ongoing for us, what you said has emanated. You know, it has come up, and it has come up in a more serious form. It has. I read in the commission reports that were reported in the press that there has been a doubt whether what the board of the Sri Lankan Airlines reported at the board meeting to the board members about the monies taken from the bank vis-a-vis as against some shares issued to them. They say that the shares were issued, but no shares were issued. This is broad daylight robberies.
So it's complete fraud.
Frauds, utter frauds. You go deep into these matters, you know, what you see behind is some manipulation. Some manipulation on a planned basis to deceive somebody. It's deception. Total frauds and deception. unfortunate thing. I mean, several things are coming up.
Like we've a whistleblower has sent us a document, and so we've become aware of the non-performing loans of the People's Bank. It amounts to something what, over how much is it?
No, in that list, I also saw that list. It's running to about 15 billion, which has been the amounts that went into non-performing as of 30th of June. So, I mean, what is going into non-performing these days for us are the amounts that have been granted very recently under this regime during this period. And if you look at that list, you see most of the loans are above 100 million.
So
most of the loans.
This is the yardstick.
And if you see the names there, I'm not going to mention anything for various other reasons. But I mean, if you see the names, they are big companies who are operating in the country.
And when we look at those, do you recognize companies that are easily identifiable as having political patronage?
Definitely, most of them having political patronage, and they have been big guns under previous government and also under this government. You see
the big guns with other people's money?
Of course, yes.
OPM.
This
a different kind of opium.
Exactly.
This is OPM.
Now this is a very...
Now tell us about the People's Bank here. What are they doing? Why is this general manager getting so much of bonuses? Performance bonus, performance for losing money. But on the other hand, having said that, they must have some creative accountants there, because although we have this perception that they're losing money, their accounts don't say that they're losing money. How is that camouflaged?
Of course, you know, this is a situation that has to be looked into seriously by not you and I, but it must be looked into by the supervisory boards, controlling authorities of this country.
But Mr. Rusiripala, they are all asleep.
And that includes the central bank as well as the government audit department. I think both organizations, both authorities are totally at default when it comes to this question of the operations of the People's Bank. You know, no mentioning of the People's Bank will be complete without referring to the founders of the bank. For what purpose was it set up? The People's Bank was set up in the early 60s, you know, to serve the people who did not have access to banking facilities in this country.
But it happens all over the place. The minute people land at the cricket board, they think that they are God. They forget the constitution of Sri Lanka cricket, they forget the sports law, and they do everything that they want. And then they've got a minister who doesn't understand half the things that goes on there. Right? So in this case, it's about the same.
Equally.
But how are they fiddling the system to put out rosy pictures and say, this is profitable?
You see now,
and then they'll say, there's no evidence of wrongdoing.
No, the best example is what happened in 1992. The bank, irrespective of the fact that they were identified to be insolvent at that time, they were showing a clear picture. How come that? Because loan loss provisioning has not been adequately done. The monies that should be set apart as obligatory functions of the bank has not been done. And the loans that has to be written off are still kept in the ongoing current sections. So all these contributed to a rosy picture, but whereas it's a cancer.
Now here's a thought. You know that list that we're talking about?
Yes.
It's 7 billion or I don't know, 15 billion.
Yes, it's running to about 15 to 16 billion.
Now, did you have a look at that and compare that with the declared non-performing? Don't they put a separate column as to how much is non-performing, how much the bank has got on its books is non-performing?
Oh, they do. There are, in fact, what I remember is there were two columns. One was the amount, the total aggregates of facilities granted to those institutions.
Yes, what my question is, that amount that is on that list, is that a fair reflection of what appears on the bank's books?
Well, now this is yet to come into the next year.
Yes.
Next year.
But now that it's being exposed, it will definitely be there.
Yeah,
but what about last year? Or
last year,
last quarter,
they
maybe
had indicated in the annual report.
Yeah.
What they have provided for as non-performing loans was only 2.5 billion.
How much?
2.5 billion.
Only.
Yeah.
So that list is about 7 times more.
Much more.
Because 7 2s are 14.
And we have 24 billion as non-performing.
Why is the GM of the bank
Yeah.
getting so much of money as a bonus?
No,
On what performance? What's the rationale?
No, you see, hardly nobody has assessed their performance. This is one question that in that article that I wrote.
Yes,
there's
today in the Ceylon Today newspaper.
Yes.
An article.
Yeah, because the papers were making a hue and cry to probe into the remuneration package of the chief executive of the People's Bank.
Yeah.
I think it's balderdash because.
Yeah.
I mean, looking into his remuneration package is totally a meaningless exercise when there are so many other aspects to it. You know, he's not the only executive who is there who is drawing these high salaries.
Yeah.
There are several others. Contract employees who were taken in.
Contract employees.
Yes, and they were taken in as far back as 1992, 1996.
So this is under Chandrika Kumaratunga's government.
Yes, Mano Titavella was the chairman of the bank.
Yeah.
When the first lot of contract employees, including an imported general manager, was taken into the bank.
Yeah. But why import them? Why about not through the cadre?
I think this is where the whole thing went wrong. And they were taken through a private company, hired through a private company. And these people ever since continued in their positions in the People's Bank, being paid these huge amounts with a package of several large amount of perks, fringe benefits.
Please tell me that this company,
Yes.
this company that they use, is not connected to any of the members, these advisors.
No. There was. I mean, we were.
What about what's his name? Mano Titavella.
Mr. Mano Titavella was the chairman of the bank.
Yeah.
At the same time, there was at that time there was a claim and issue among the trade unions and other persons whether he had any connection with the company that recruited these people.
Right.
I mean, that was never established.
No.
Never established.
No.
Because nobody inquired into it.
Right.
Only the thing that happened was they continued to date, and being in the contract positions, they were elevated to the position of the general manager of the bank.
Right.
And some were promoted as DGMs,
Yeah.
deputy general managers.
Yeah.
And they were not in the cadre. They were outside the cadre. These positions were all created. And if you look at it very carefully, most of the loans that have gone into non-performing now have been approved and recommended and decided by these contract employees who have been serving in very highly strategic positions.
And there's one item I know of,
Yes.
in which a TOD,
Yes.
an unsecured, non-collateralized
Yes.
amount has been given of 10 million.
Yes.
The very next day,
Yeah.
the 10 million is given over the counter.
Yes.
Cash over the counter.
Yes.
And the very next day, that man retires from the bank. Or
Yes.
his contract comes to an
His
end.
contract comes to an end.
But, there's a but. Now tell us about
following day,
Yeah.
he goes and sits as the head of the People's Leasing Company.
Well, there you are.
10 million
So we see,
over the counter, approved, authorized by him, and to date it remains unpaid.
and the non-performing loans of that particular company is over ₹1 billion.
This is the reason. You know, now that is why there is a huge claim in the country today in the financial circles. You know, the last banking commission we had in this country was when President Premadasa was the president of the country.
Yeah.
He started the banking commission.
All good things seems to be associated with President Premadasa.
1993, a very down-to-earth, meaningful things that he did. And he appointed people like, you know, Professor Lakshman, Dr. Salgadu, to run that banking commission, and they submitted perfect reports for rectifying the situation.
Right.
And now how many decades have passed for us after that date and to date? And how many things are happening? What is happening in the banking industry? High time. For the sake of the economy of the country, for the sake of good governance, for the sake of the continuance of the state-owned enterprises which are their sole saviors and saline providers to the government at time of disaster, to safeguard them, a banking commission has to be appointed.
But now I want to ask you this, and it's the catalyst for this question to you is a question that a viewer has sent. Why is the President ignoring Rusiri's exposure of various non-performing loans? Is he not the executive president? Now, in the meantime, I'd also like to point out that the President is saying is a very fortunate man. He's got the former president, the current chairman of the People's Bank as the what's he called, the head chief of staff. Right. So then he's got the man right there. So that list can be made available to the President. The President can see firsthand. And aren't these bank officials frightened of what's going to happen?
They are really frightened of this situation, because at a time when there was so much of a calamity happening in the People's Bank, and that chairman who was there sitting for nearly 3 years in that bank, and who is directly and indirectly responsible for these things that have been exposed and several others unexposed, going and sitting as the chief of staff of the President's office, has caused a lot of alarm among the bankers. You know, but then the choice is the President's. We don't know the reason. He may be having good reasons, because that position to which he was appointed is a very vulnerable position. Indeed. His predecessor is now in jail.
That's right.
He has only taken 20 billion.
Obviously, a banker is sending this. Yesterday, it was the same state bank that made the LKR to devalue, which was incidentally pushing the rupee to a historical low. Another one. Why do we need more commissions? If there is fraud, the police should handle it immediately. That's a fair comment, isn't it?
I think it goes a little beyond. I think he's correct. I respect that view. But you know why a commission is required is we don't need these things only for punitive purposes. We need the things for corrective purposes. These institutions have to go on. They have to be corrected. The punitive part is one thing, you know.
And here's a message from the JO side. And they're feeling a little bit left out. So here we go. We all know Sri Lankan Airlines is making losses in the previous regime. Regime. You should also highlight in your newsline for the public to know. We do. The losses didn't come about just now. They've been happening from a long time.
No, some people look at it in a very parochial way. Indeed. We do expose. I mean, we don't have to have any reservations about it. After all, most of these things have been precipitated during that time and continuing. The unfortunate thing is the government, which we wanted to rectify these things, is not doing that.
Right. Now then, I think we'll need a couple more minutes with all these questions that are coming in. But, Mr. Rusiripala, these accounts of the People's Bank, it can't be true if we know what's going on. It's a complete sample in there.
You see, the capital adequacy, now they are short of the capital adequacy.
So how do they do that?
You know, the treasury has been pumping monies, you know, for us. Firstly, in 1993, they gave 1.1 billion only for capital adequacy. Then between 2005 and 2008, they gave 6 billion. In 2017, the treasury had to allocate 5 more billion. And in addition to that, over and above, the banks can't survive. They borrowed by issue of debentures to the pension fund 10 billion. You know, this is how the bank is functioning today. And if this is the performance, that is the criteria for paying millions as bonuses, as performance bonuses to these executive officers, contractors, there is absolutely something wrong somewhere, for which someone more important is responsible for a long time, over a long period of time, unless otherwise exposed through a commission or some authoritative finding, will never come to light.
I'm looking at this message. In the name of God, can nothing be done to save us of this surge, this scourge?
No, we have to go, along with these things. Of course, people brought about a change, expecting that these things will be addressed. Now the people are beginning to feel that they are not being addressed. So the people will think of alternatives. They will have to. If the people whom they wanted these things to be addressed properly and corrected are not doing their job, the people of the country, it is finally, it is upon us the responsibility.
Mr. Rusiripala, can we ask you this, for and on behalf of the people?
Yes.
Could we ask you to put pen to paper and to write a letter to the governor of the central bank, raising all these questions, and providing him with details which he will know anyway, and ask him to act at least in the name of God, if not for and on behalf of the people of Sri Lanka? Will you do that for us?
Faraz.
We will give it every publicity.
No, I will certainly do that. But you know, there is a very interesting thing. 3 employees of the bank who happen to be officials of the trade union, who exposed this in the interest of the institution, were to be charge sheeted. They went to courts. The district court gave an injunction that the bank can't go and hold a punishment, punish them. The bank appealed against it, against these 3 people, 3 cases. Then the appeal court upheld the decision of the district court. The bank went to Supreme Court. Now the matter was before the Supreme Court. What the reason is, 3 employees who happen to be trade union leaders exposed what is happening in the bank in the interest of the bank. They have been taken. Now find out.
What's happened? Have they been out?
Now the Supreme Court case is still pending to be withdrawn, because the bank is now trying to negotiate with these 3 people to withdraw the charge sheeting of them.
It's utterly criminal.
No,
if you look at
the criminality lies elsewhere. If somebody can find out how much of monies they have paid for this litigation.
That's what I mean.
Litigation.
That's the criminal.
I think your Gammadda program can be supported for 10 districts with that money. Wow.
And please write that letter to the central bank, because the central bank has the key. Has the key.
And people, when they asked for the amounts to be declared under the RTI, the bank refused.
It's a big cover.
No, we can't know how much this bank, owning the public money, has spent for this litigation, this type of litigation. Unwanted.
And unwarranted.
Unwarranted litigation.
And it's the people's money.
No, to safeguard their frauds. Litigation to safeguard their weaknesses, shortcomings.
I hope that economists in this government, like Kabir Hashim, are actually listening to this, or are they all immune to this sort of thing?
I mean, if you go to that part, we can pinpoint instances where some of the perpetrators went there.
Can you tell us how much the legal fees were?
I mean, it ran into millions. You know, in one case that I know, a defamation case, the lawyer appearing for the bank is paid nearly 500,000 for one sitting.
Do you know what? We're talking about corruption. We can go on and on and on. But
what a pity.
We've overrun 3 minutes. The producer downstairs, Harshad, is having a fit. And so therefore it's time, when he's screaming, it's time for me to let him go. Rusiripala Tennakoon, thank you ever so much. Please write that letter. Please let us know so that we can march forward in unearthing the truth.
I will copy it to the President also.
Please, and also, could you also let me know a little bit later, these lawyers, were they UNP lawyers? I'd like to know that.
We'll see.
On that note, thank you very much. We'll have you back and we'll ask you the answer to that, shall we? That's the way it was, ladies and gentlemen, on Friday the 7th of September 2018. It's still lovely country. Take care. God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.